Hello, hello, hello. Welcome to Our Narrow Road podcast, where I, Amanda Williams, your host, and Avery Williams, your co-host, are living out a countercultural life, and we're inviting you to join us. We're so glad you're here. Hey, everybody. I am back, and today we are going to be talking about summer learning, and I'm so grateful to be back with you guys. So grateful that you're here with me. What brought this about, Amanda? Well, let me tell you. You know how this whole podcast is about living counterculturally and AKA what makes you weird. And so just kidding, but living counterculturally, you know that you live counterculturally, but sometimes you're just not aware of all the ways that people think you're countercultural or different until conversations come about. And so this came about with a conversation I had with a gal the other day who I believe was a teacher. And so she was just simply saying, are you guys done with school for the year? What does that look like for you? And I thought, oh yeah, that is something that is different for some people. Some people homeschool year round, some people unschool. Obviously, the public school answers to the state, and so they are doing 180 days a year, where homeschoolers answer to the state by doing 148 days a year. And I thought, yeah, this can really look different for a lot of people. And I had said, well, our seat work is finished. And so, yes, we're on summer break, but I feel like we're just learning all the time. And this brought me back to a situation that we had years ago when Aiden and Avery were small, and we had been to the Mega Mall. I believe it was on Half Price Tuesdays or something like that. And the aquarium up there had, again, like half price admission, I think it was. And so we decided to go, and we were already done with school for the year, and we were just going for the pure enjoyment of learning and getting to see something new and having something fun to do. And there were, this was the end of the school year for some of the public schools up there. And there were more than several, a lot of field trips going on from the public school. And I remember driving home that day thinking, wow, if the public schools are counting that as a learning day, then why aren't we as homeschoolers counting that as a learning day? And I used to be very meticulous, and I had this calendar, and I kept track of every single learning day. And, if it snowed one day, did we go out and play for half a day? Okay. Then I will only count a half a day. And I was just really strict about it. And we were always finishing plenty early ahead of the public school. And I just remember thinking, I'm learning, our kids are learning all year long. And I thought, that's just because I'm different, But I do think that every homeschooler does it differently. Every public schooler does it differently. They could say the same thing. We might be in the building for 180 days a year, but we're doing other things, outside of that and learning all summer long in different areas. And so I thought that would be something great to talk about today. And if you're not a homeschooling mom, or you don't even have kiddos, there's something to be said for us as adults learning too and making this a learning summer. I think we should always be learning. We should be lead learners. And no matter why we're learning, whether it's to teach somebody else, I think I often say I really enjoy being around people who love to learn because our conversations are so rich. And I think, if you're hanging out with somebody who's maybe, just comes home after work and no shade to this, I'm just saying, but they don't have a lot of energy. And so they just kind of play bubble pop on their phone and watch some shows. They don't have a lot of material coming in or things to enrich them or to grow them. And so when you get together and you want to go out to dinner, there's not a lot to talk about. It's like, oh, what books are you reading? Or what hobbies do you like? So the conversation, stems mostly to what do you do for a living? And that's cool. And how long have you worked there? That kind of thing. And so it's really nice to be around people who are reading good books and, maybe in a Bible study, learning something new hobby-wise, and maybe their family's changing and growing, and so they have new experiences. Maybe they travel. I don't know. It's just it's nice to be around those who are pouring into themselves, and then, we can sharpen each other as we talk. I just had some really good girlfriends over. We try to get together 4 times a year, once a quarter. And the whole conversation started when they came while we were eating was about a new book that 2 of them had read. And they were sharing some things that they were pondering, and they were asking the other girls here what they thought. And we had a really good discussion. And I remember when they left, I thought, I am so grateful for that conversation today. I was thinking back through the books they were reading, different things that were happening at their church, things that were happening with their kids, different trips they had taken and why, different things that they were investing in their time in. how they were spending their summer. It was really, really fun and encouraging for me. And so if you're not a homeschooling mom and if you don't have kiddos at home, please take ideas and encouragement to just continue learning, trying things, pouring into yourself so that your conversations can be glorifying to God and encouraging and edifying to others. And so what I started with kind of thinking about this, and, like I say, I've graduated 2 kiddos now, 4 more to go. And so I'm trying to think back over the seasons and how things maybe are different for us, or maybe how they've stayed the same. But one thing that I remember having to notice or to ponder and kind of wrestle through is that it seemed like there was 2 main philosophies when it came to learning. There was the group that thought that you have a very small amount of time with your kids and you need to try to teach them all the things, every foreign language, all the math skills, all the different types of art, all the English and all the editing exercises and all the things. And there's another camp that believes, wow, we have only a short amount of time with our kids. There's no way we can teach them all the things. And so instead, we want to prepare them with all of the tools so they can then learn all the things. And I think probably when I started my homeschool journey, when the Lord called us to homeschool, I was probably in the camp that I knew there was so much to teach our kids and I didn't want to miss anything. How do I do it all? How do I fit it all in? What if I miss something? And so I think that was kind of my fear. And as I began to study different types of schooling and different types of philosophies, I learned if God is an infinite God and we are finite man, there is no way we will ever learn all the things. And I don't want my kids to do the majority of their learning while they're living in my home. I want to prepare them so that they continue learning for the rest of their lives. If they're going to school about 13 years, going to school, I say in quotation marks, kindergarten through senior year, and then of course there can be college, but that's often out of our home. If they're with us for those 13 years learning, I pray that their life is longer than 13 years. You know what I'm saying? That should be a small percentage of the time that they're given to learn. And so thinking about it that way, it's like we don't have time to learn all the things, but we can shape them and we can give them the tools so they can go off and learn something new. I think of it like in Eric's business. When he brings in a student who's maybe wanting to job shadow him and learn a skill, he may have a summer with that student and he can't teach them how to build a house from start to finish in that summer. He can teach them, how to frame a wall, and he can teach them how to lay flooring, and he can teach them how to install windows and how to shop for roofing materials. And then the summer's over. And there's so much more that goes into building a house. And so instead of looking at it like I have to cram all of this into this person like they're a machine, I have to code their brain, I have to give them all the codes. It's more like, let me teach you how to use this hammer. Let me teach you how to use a tape measure properly. That's a real thing. Let me teach you how to use power tools and to keep them charged. Let me teach you what to do when they break down. And then let me teach you how to use them efficiently and what tool works for the best jobs, or what tool would be best for certain jobs. And then you dive in, and when they leave at the end of the summer, they have metaphorically a toolbox full of tools and literally the knowledge of how to use every tool that they've come in contact with, and they know what it's for. And so if they go off and, somebody needs some wood cut up or somebody needs some flooring laid, they might have a general knowledge of where to start and how to learn that. They know how to run the tools. They know what they're called. They know the products that they need. And yeah, maybe they've only done it a couple times, but they've got a peg now where they've hung information on, and they can then build on that skill because you've provided that tool for them and that experience. And so I think that's the philosophy that I migrated toward as I sat across the table from my kids and I learned how they work, how their brains develop, how they responded to my methods of teaching or lack of. And it really, really helped. And then just studying different philosophies of learning. And so I'm not here to tell you what your philosophy of learning should be. No. You are your kid's mama for a reason. God has chosen you and you know what's best for them. Don't let anybody tell you differently. You have what it takes. But yes, getting your fingers on some different options and really wrestling through it yourself. Even in your own journey, if, like I said, you're not homeschooling, you don't have kiddos at home, whatever, as a human being, you have what it takes. Think about, what tools do I have in my toolbox? What kinds of things can I learn? Some people are like, I am not good at math. I struggled with it all of my life and I just prefer to steer clear of it. What if you leaned into that? What if you got the grandkids and you're like, I'm going to play Monopoly. We're going to do this. Or I'm going to take the grandkids out shopping and I'm going to have them help me figure out what the sales tax is today. There's like fun ways that you can brush up on your skills. Like you have the tools you need and just don't settle, that this is too hard for me. This is where I tap out. And so same with literature and English and, I'm just not a good writer. I'm not a good speller. Avery and I tease, she's shared on the podcast before, her brain just has not clicked in that way yet. She's 18 years old, still struggles with spelling. She, could get diagnosed with dyslexia, possibly see if that's an issue. But I think for her, mostly it's just the logic behind sounding out the word makes no sense to her. And so if she sounds it out, the way she writes it makes sense, but our way of spelling doesn't make sense. And so I think she's just far too logical to kind of figure out how the English language is spelled. But it will click one day for her. It will be there. But I always tell her, lean into it. Just keep memorizing words. Just keep asking for help. How do you spell this word? And don't be embarrassed about it. Continue to be a lead learner. You have all the tools. So all that to say, this is what summer learning looks like for the Williams. Okay, let's just dive right in. We love a classical education, like Classical Conversations is our curriculum that we use through the year. And the reason we love this classical learning is because it works with the human body and how it develops, the way the brain learns. Those formative years where you're learning vocabulary, it's like the brain is a sponge and it can pick up on so many things and it can memorize and absorb things, even if it doesn't know why it's absorbing things. Little ditties on the TV, little commercials, little jingles that you hear. These kids, they've got it down. They can memorize scripture early on. This is why it is very tempting as a parent to throw multiple foreign languages at your child at a young age. And I'm not saying that's bad, but I think that we can teeter on, there's some caution. If we want to work with their brain and, oh my goodness, they can memorize all these things, we can cram all this information in. We do borderline tempt ourselves, I guess, and trip our kids up to lose their love for learning, because there comes a time when their brain starts developing differently and they want to start wrestling through things. It's called the dialectic stage, and they want to wrestle through things that they've been taught. And if it's always jumping through the hoops and just cramming more in, they have this rhythm down and these patterns and these habits. And if they don't have that time to wrestle through ideas, there's some areas in life that just become a struggle, like developing their own faith separate from yours and being able to wrestle through the things that they've learned, reading the Bible on their own and trying to figure out where they land on things, how they understand scripture, asking for help to understand deeply, even some of the languages. I've learned all these languages, but I'm wrestling through, conjugations and verb tenses, and different languages have similarities, but they have differences. And if they don't have time to wrestle through those things, they're not going to get to a level of rhetorician where they can then teach them to someone else. And what a shame to cram all of this stuff into a human body and then it goes nowhere. It goes, it stops there. We want our kids to be able to have a legacy. We want to leave a legacy. We want them to be able to leave a legacy. The joy of learning is to learn more about our Creator and our Savior and to be able to share with others, right? So I just caution, if you're having little kids and you're just, spending lots of time at a table doing worksheets or lots of cramming of information. Classical Conversations does memorize things, but it's hand-picked and it's not all inclusive. They have a goal of where they're heading toward graduation. And it's like, here's where the arrow is and it's pointing forward. And now you get to decide how this information comes into play with your family. And that's what I love. There's a clear chart, a clear pathway of where we're headed. There's a beginning and an end. There's goals, but I get to lead my family the way God has called me to. And so we love doing that during the year. It's a 24-week program. I think that is very, very generous information, but not too much. And everything is put to songs and chants and games. And so you're working with the child and all of their senses. And so that's why that type of memorization at that age is a little bit different. When we come to our summer learning, it's a little easier just because in our state, the weather is nicer. We kind of come out of winter and everybody wants to be outside spring, summer, and fall. And so Charlotte Mason comes into play. She was a pioneering educator. She was British, and she promoted seeing the child as a whole person. So does Classical Conversations, by the way. And Charlotte Mason is very compatible with classical education. It's still classical, but she has a lot of draw to nature and God's creation. And even though it's very intentional, what you're learning, you're not just stumbling upon things and learning them as you find them. There's still intentionality and there's still direction and guidance. But there's this draw to the arts, draw to the slowing of things, and being able to take in some information, process it, and then retell it. And we do a lot of that in our English course as well with Classical Conversations. And so I feel like they go together so well. And so one of the quotes that I held on to when I first started researching, I guess for lack of a better word, some different types of homeschooling, she says, education is an atmosphere, a discipline, and a life. And when we were just getting started, I had also stumbled on, and I think I've referred this in one of our recommendation podcasts, but the Read Aloud Revival with Sarah McKenzie. So readaloudrevival.com. If you've never been there, I highly recommend you go. Their goal is to make lasting relationships and memories with your kids through books. And I love, love, love following along with their podcast and some of their suggestions. They've got book lists up the yin yang. If you want book lists for boys for a certain age, book lists for girls, book lists for, the United States kind of thing. History, they've got all these wonderful book lists and they're so helpful. And so she also does coaching classes and encouragement classes for moms that are homeschooling. And one of them was the rule of 6. Well, I don't like that number, and how I am. So I did the Williams family rule of 7. And this is basically asking yourself, if my kids were sitting at the table eating out with friends as young adults, and somebody across the table says to them, hey, I heard you were homeschooled as a child. What was that like? What kinds of things would you hope they would say? And then she gives us some time and we're all jotting down like, oh man, I hope they say that we spent a lot of time in God's word. And I hope they just loved the relationship time with their siblings. I hope they, say how we read such great stories. And, all of these moms across the world are on this Zoom call. And when we all come back, we get to share what we wrote. And not one person wrote, I really hope they remember that we finished our math textbook every year. I really hope that they remember that they learned 3 foreign languages in kindergarten. Most of the things that we talked about were more soul shaping, family shaping, relationship shaping, not academic. But here all of us moms were pushing, striving for all of these academics, hoping that one day our kids would remember the reading and the lightheartedness and the relationships. And so she was basically helping us see that if we don't set out some rules for ourselves, we are easily going to get sucked in to the rigor. And, rigor mortis, that's you're dead. Okay. So we don't want dead living, or we don't want dead schooling. We want living schooling and living learning, basically. And so our rule of 7, and you're going to think these might be a little weird, but our rule of 7 is encourage diligence through meaningful work, experience good food, celebrate always and create often, savor unhurried days, seek truth, read great stories, and respect relationships. I'll go over those one more time. And some of these were taken from a friend that I really respected, like 2 of these, I think, she had shared with me, and I really love them. So encourage diligence through meaningful work, experience good food, celebrate always and create often, savor unhurried days, seek truth, read great stories, and respect relationships. And so if I can lay my head down on the pillow at night and say, did we eat good food today? Yeah, we did. We cooked a really good supper together. Did we seek truth? Yeah, we were in God's word this morning and we were watching the news this afternoon and we were searching for truth. Did we read great stories? Yes, we did our family read aloud before bed. Did we respect relationships? That was a tough one. There was a lot of bickering and fighting today. That's something that we need to keep working on. Did we encourage diligence through meaningful work? Yep. We encouraged one another to stay focused on that math lesson. It's meaningful work. Be diligent. You're almost done. Let's see here. Celebrate always and create often. Did we celebrate today? Yeah, so-and-so finished their math test before the timer went off. So-and-so finally got that spelling word memorized. So-and-so wrote their paper and they were so excited about it. They remembered all of the dress ups. Yes, we created today. We created our good supper that we talked about, and we created a really beautiful thank you note to Grandma and Grandpa, something like that. And so that list is designed to try to help us think through, am I doing enough? Because that's the question we always ask ourselves. Am I doing enough? Am I missing something? Am I doing okay? And if I had to say, did our math go perfectly? Did we get all the science done? Did we do all the fun extras? Did we put together the puzzles? Did we do beautiful art today? If it was all this academic push, I would be defeated every day. And those aren't even my goals. Like I said, when my kids are asked as adults, those aren't the things I want them to remember. I want them to remember the rule of 7. So I need to design my days and craft my days around these, and then let the Holy Spirit move and guide us in flexibility, with hearts of flexibility. So all that to say, when it comes to summertime, I still have those things in the back of my mind. My kids, we have celebrated. We are done with math. Woohoo, high 10s. We are done with English, homeschool high 5. We have completed a really great year. It is summer break. Okay, here's what summer break is for us. We have intentional 4-H classes. Now, I am not saying that you need to busy your kids in the summer. Absolutely not. My kids, just because we homeschool, I think this is an awesome opportunity to rub shoulders with other kids in the community, to be known and to know others, to go and learn these amazing, it's like a field trip. Going to a farm and learning how they milk dairy cows, going to another farm and learning how they make soap, going to a cosmetology school and learning what that might look like, going to a local factory, figuring out how they adhere the cranes to the trucks. I mean, the classes we have in our county are amazing. And if you have an opportunity to support your 4-H in your community, I would highly recommend it and get involved. And if they don't have a lot of classes for young kids, and maybe you're in a season of life where you have some free time, offer to help. Hey, I know how to sew. I've got 2 sewing machines. Let's do a sewing workshop, and I'll come and I'll help. Or I might not be able to teach the class, but I'll loan my machines for the day. It is such a beautiful opportunity to get involved in. So our summer looks that way. There's also summer sports, a lot of fun, exercising, being outside, being with friends. We have a couple in our town. We just love them dearly, and they are doing a cross-country camp of sorts for the month of June. And so the kids practice a couple days a week, and they get to race every Saturday morning from 9 to 9:15. And then they have a little award ceremony. And it's just people in our area. And it has been amazing to watch our kids who didn't ever know they could run a mile overcome and feel so proud of themselves and the confidence that they're building. And it has just been a joy. And so we have softball and baseball. I've talked about that before. And again, if my kids didn't enjoy sports or they didn't want to do that, we'd find something else. We'd go hiking. We'd spend more time at the pool. Anything to be active and be outside, absorbing that vitamin D and just enjoying God's creation. And so that's what some of our summer stuff looks like. And it's just not for busyness. It's just to indulge in the abundant, beautiful life that the Lord has for us. And so it's also about doing house projects and learning life skills. We have a lot more time in the summer to do a deeper learning of some of the life skills that they would love, like a little bit deeper and more baking. We're not as crunched for time. And so basically, I've divided up kind of what our summer looks like into what does the atmosphere look like? What are the disciplines that we're putting in place, and what does life look like? And so, because Charlotte Mason said, education's an atmosphere, a discipline, and a life. So based on our rules of 7, our atmosphere is having lots and lots of books laying around for the kids to stumble upon. This year, we just got our garden back after our renovation project. I'm so excited. And to see the kids out in the garden, coming in, Mom, you have another tomato, and Mom, the squash is growing. It is so amazing. Cooking opportunities, having clean counters and all of the utensils that they might need, having a working mixer, having a working, the immersion blender, having all of your flours filled and your sugars and your spices, and just having those things in your atmosphere. So when their creativity sparks, you have everything you need. Having extra fishing poles around, having them, threaded? I don't know. Having the line, the fishing line put on the pole so it's ready to go at a moment's notice. Pocket knives for whittling, puzzles, art supplies. Fresh art supplies in the summer is the best. Instruments, we've got guitars, and we now have a trombone and a clarinet and a trumpet, and even things like record players. We bought this year cassette tapes, and I just laid out some old cassette tapes the kids were wondering about. And oh man, they walk around with their headphones on, just like we used to in the 80s when it drove everybody nuts, and they're listening and delighting in good music and stories. Let's see, I've got a list here. Drills, tools, sanders, saws, things like that, just having them around. We ended up buying a set. It was at Christmas time, it was actually given to me, but we now have our own set of tools at home because it's, Eric will come home at night and I'm like, oh, I need a saw. Oh, it's in my trailer at such and such job. And so I'm like, we need some home tools. And so the kids, can I go cut some firewood and have a campfire tonight? Having those kinds of things that you need. If the TV is going to be going in the evening, maybe I'll pop on a cooking show, and the kids love it. It's like they're glued to, what is that? Ooh, what's that tool? Ooh, Mom, did you see how she did that? So that's a lot of fun. Having like fashion magazines or different books for decorating laying around, just to spark interest, putting up a clothesline, having pets, having new beach towels or pool toys, maybe having a tent, setting that up in the backyard and just letting the kids have it in their atmosphere, camping supplies, maybe a lantern or some flashlights. So basically just setting up your atmosphere for the indulgence of summer, okay? So then what are some disciplines that might come out of that? Starting a summer sport. Mom had fishing poles. She had baseball bats and balls and gloves. I've been playing catch. I think I might like softball or baseball. Watercolor, learning a new skill. That's something we're doing this year as a family. And so those art supplies, those are what have gotten us excited. A new game or an activity. The 4-H classes we talked about, new hobbies, learning how to make homemade ice cream. Okay. We have a homemade ice cream maker. I've got the proper salt. If somebody gets a little stirring in their soul, I have what I need. Making yogurt, learning new ways to make yogurt with your raw milk and your Instant Pot. Making your own mayo, having those ingredients on hand. How to season a cast iron skillet. Those are disciplines that we can learn, especially with camping, and we use them in the house. How to water a garden. Okay, so we've got the garden. Things are growing. What are the disciplines that come from that? We need to occasionally weed the garden. We need to learn to water it. How do we harvest the herbs? Other things like how do we order our beef for the year, or the pig or the lamb and our chickens? How do we order the meat? What are the different cuts of the animal? How do we cook different portions of the animal? Those are all disciplines that we learn from the atmosphere of having these things. How do we set up a tent? You have a tent. How do we set it up? How do we take it down? How do we cast a fishing pole? Okay, so those are some disciplines that come from having this atmosphere. So then what does life look like? So you've got your atmosphere set up. You've got this beauty all around you. You have your supplies ready to go. The children are learning with the beautiful garden comes disciplines. And now they're excited. They're fighting over who gets to water the garden. And I'm like, no, that's my special time. But I have graciously given them the hose. But it's just a beautiful thing to see. So now weeding the garden and watering the garden, this is not a burden. This is not a chore. This is something new because the atmosphere was prepared for them. Does that make sense? So the life that you get from these things is you get children who know and love to pitch in with cleaning, with cooking, helping with laundry. Oh my goodness, I get to hang these out on the line with these little clips. This is so fun. It works, I promise. Canning, you have the supplies, you've got the garden, they've helped water, they've helped weed. You're harvesting all these tomatoes. What are you doing with them, Mom? Teach me. It just spurs this learning. Framing a wall. I learned how to, to measure or use a tape measure. I know how to make the saw work, and I know how to put 2x4s together. Mom, I think I could frame a wall. Meal planning, budgeting money and time on a calendar. That's really important. So when you do have these events, I have little mailboxes for my kids. And if they have, they don't have their own phones and they don't have their own email, but we do have a house cell phone that if somebody's going to go like on a trip or a 4-H class, and I think, the pickup time might change or they might need to communicate something with me, I'll send that with them, but it's completely bricked. They can't get on the internet at all. They can't even receive phone calls to the phone if the number's not pre-saved in the phone. So it's completely safe, but they don't have access to any of those things. And so I have all the coaches send me their stuff. I print out the email, I put it in their mailbox. So they're still responsible for managing their schedule, of course, with help and reminders. But they get out their email. They're like, okay, I have softball or cross country every Tuesday, Thursday from this time to this time. They have to look at the calendar. What location are they having it today? If any updates come through from the coach, I just print it off, put it in their mailbox. So they're still developing responsibility. You would not believe how many people, grown people, do not know how to keep a calendar. It just flabbergasts me. It floors me. It's like, learn how to keep a calendar. They learn how to run errands. They learn how to pack up to go to the beach for the day. So as you can see, just beautiful summer days ahead. And, we just had summer solstice. So I know a lot of people are like, oh, summer's going so fast. I'm like, no. We just had summer solstice on the 21st of June. So we're just finishing spring, y'all. And we're into summer now. And we have this elongated time that the Lord has for us. And we can slow it. We can fill it. We're not busying ourselves. We're filling our time intentionally. I have a lot of people say, oh, I just don't know how you do it. I just feel like you do everything. How do you do, all these things? You guys, when it's an overflow of your heart, when you're not cramming schedules for the sake of cramming, but when you're intentionally choosing events or items that meet your goals, your rule of 7, that help develop the atmosphere and the disciplines to make a beautiful life, you don't feel exhausted. You don't feel overwhelmed. When you're using your gifts and your family's gifts and you're celebrating together and you're creating new things and you're being inspired, it overflows. So your life is full. You have a full life, but you don't have a busy life. And so a good friend taught me years ago the difference between full and busy. And I love that. And so we do aim to have full, abundant lives, but we don't want to be just busy for the sake of being busy. And so that is what summer learning looks like for the Williams. I know it's countercultural. I know it's on the narrow road. But I trust that you're interested in that because you are here. And so I pray that whatever the Lord is stirring in you today while listening to this, whether it's just like, oh, I'm going to just take one little area of the house and create this little atmosphere, or, oh, there's one thing that I would love to develop our discipline in, or I would love to add this beauty to our full life. I just pray that the Lord would speak to you. And again, just so happy you're here, and we will be back next week. Thanks again. Bye-bye.